Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the 704 High School Highlight Podcast. My name is Jeff Taylor. I'm the sports director here at Bahakel Sports. Thanks for joining us. This podcast brought to you by the Downer Law Firm, Charlotte's hometown legal team. If you're ever in an accident or injured, make sure you contact the Downer Law Firm. And today, we are going to talk high school football. We are wrapping up the season. It's hard to believe. I thought we just started summer practices yesterday, but here we are. It's championship weekend for the North Carolina high school public schools. And to help us work through all of that, who else can I bring in? I had to bring in my man, Reggie Walker, who is, believe it or not, even though the background says Charlotte, my man's in Vegas. So, Reggie, how are you, my friend?
You know, Jeff, I'm doing really well. It's interesting that I'm out here this week. I'm at the Intercollegiate Athletic Forum, which the interesting thing about it, Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, has made some waves with his latest proposal. We heard from multiple conference commissioners about it as well. But this is my last road trip for work, and it culminates with the last week of the high school football season. So truly has been a long season for yours truly with the work travel, doing high school games, doing college games. But it's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate the folks at Bahakel Sports for having me, as well as Darren, be a part of bringing these high school games to everybody.
I'll still say you guys are the best broadcasting duo in the area. Maybe, hey, I'm going to say in the U.S. How about that? No, and what you guys have brought to the table every weekend has been amazing. Bringing the games that you've done with Bahakel Sports, our game of the week, and getting coaches afterwards, and just a relationship. I think Bahakel Sports continues to build across the high school scene here in the Queen City. So, of course, major props to you. Okay, so let's get into it. Big weekend. It all culminates on actually Saturday at 7:00. It's the 4A state championship, and that is between Weddington, who takes on Hoggard. Now, let's go back real quick to last Friday night with Indy playing Weddington. And I talked to Darren a little bit on Game On the other day, and as I was talking to Darren, the one thing that kind of impressed me with Weddington was the weather was not good. It was cold. They played the type of football, in December that wins football games. They ran it, and they played strong defense. Is that kind of what you saw from Weddington past Friday night? And to me, the way they dominated the trenches also.
You said it right there, dominating the trenches. Adaptability, I think, is the first piece of it with that football team. You look at a guy like Tyler Budge and his ability to push the ball down the field. You've got a weapon like Keenan Jackson amongst others, Barber as well, that can make some plays. And so you look at all of those guys and you go, man, they can really hurt you over the top, make a lot of plays. And then you look at the offensive line and you go, wait a minute. And then you realize Tyler Budge can run the football. And then you start looking at those running backs, right? And whether it's Diamond or anybody else really that they can put back there, they're physical downhill when they run the football. The offensive line fires off. And look, Jeff, the game of football is won at the line of scrimmage. Like, I don't care how good a quarterback is. You and I talked about it in the past, right? Like, yep. Two people get a record next to their name in football, the head coach and the quarterback. But the reality is, there's a reason why, if you look at most rosters and if you look at most coaching staffs, both at the high school and the college level, oftentimes, who's the most experienced coach on the staff? The offensive line coach. And there's a reason for that. You have to be able to win the line. The old gritty guy, right? You have to be able to win the line of scrimmage. I thought Weddington, particularly in the second half, and look, I don't want to take anything away from Independence. Those kids played really hard. The fact of the matter is they are somewhat undersized in the front, defensively in particular. And I thought Weddington understood the assignment, if you will, in that situation. Coach Andy Capone made the adjustment and said, you know what, we're going to be more physical down the stretch. And not to minimize, because they made some plays in the first half. They just ended up kicking field goals instead of finishing those drives. So once the offensive line kind of got into a rhythm, got their confidence up, it became really, really difficult for Independence to stop this offense. And then on the other side of things, it was sort of the same thing. With all due respect to the Independence offensive line, I love Justin Little, Vontrez Birch, Will Brown at tight end, Jaden Jones, the running back, who never really was able to sort of get untracked in that game. It's because of that front seven. You think about guys like Louisa, Drew and Aiden Harris, TJ Davis, just so many guys up front. Those guys were unblockable at times. And when you have the ability to win at the line of scrimmage like Weddington did, it proved to be the difference in the game.
Yeah, and I guess it never really hit me because DJ McFadden had done such a great job, and that offense was just dynamic, as you mentioned, with Jaden Jones and Justin Little and all the stuff that they'd done there. When I watched the game and went back and rewatched it from this past Friday night, yeah, the size up front, I didn't really remember that how much of a discrepancy there was, and so kudos to Weddington. They did, I mean, they did what they had to do to get the win. Let me ask you this, because here's an interesting thing too. We talk about the dynamic offense that Independence had. You talked about Butler, and we talk about Huff and the Mallard Creeks and stuff. To me, Weddington was kind of like this, I don't know, number one seed, but they were a quiet number one seed. Does that make sense? It just seemed like they just went out every Friday night and did what they had to do. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't spectacular all the time. It was just they were kind of a quiet number one seed who did what they needed to do.
I think that was twofold. I think number one, it was a little bit of sort of old hat, right? Because as long as Andy Capone has been there, they've practiced on Thanksgiving. If you take out the COVID year, obviously, they've essentially practiced every year on Thanksgiving. So that tells you how deep they are in the playoffs right there. I think the other piece of it, the loss at the end of the season to Marvin Ridge kind of impacted a lot of people's opinion. And to some people, they questioned them as a 1 seed because of that loss. I think they have proven to us that they deserve that 1 seed. But I want to make another point because you mentioned Independence and Butler. Butler is not the most overly physically imposing team, particularly at the line of scrimmage. Independence is built to handle them because of the way that they can cover so many people with the athleticism in the back end. The backs, or the defensive backs, I should say, and the linebackers can all really run and cover really well at Independence. So on paper, them against Butler, if they play well enough in one-on-one situations, it works because Butler is not we're going to run it downhill simply the way that Weddington chose to do it. So I think it was a little bit of that old adage, styles make fights. And I just think the style of Weddington, particularly what they chose to do in the second half, is what really sort of impacted this Independence football team. But you're absolutely right. The job that DJ McFadden Jr. has done with that group, largely underclassmen. You think about guys like Nick Reddish, Justin Little at quarterback. Jaden Jones is only a sophomore at the running back position. That kid had 10 100-yard games. So you look at that football team, the youth, you just figure they're going to be back. They were battle tested early this season, and it proved to pay dividends when they got to the playoffs.
Before we get to the Weddington matchup against Hoggard on Saturday, we talked a little bit before the podcast started, and you just hit on it a little bit. One thing that amazed me about this football season from beginning to end was how the underclassmen seemed to step up. I mean, the future of football in the Queen City is very bright, if you ask me. I was pretty stunned at the way a lot of these kids played.
Absolutely. I mean, let's just name, I'm just going to name a few of the underclassmen kids that are in the area that we're going to see again. Zach Lawrence.
Right.
You talk about, and he's at Butler. You talk about Little at Independence. Those are just some quarterbacks. Jaden Jones at Independence, right? You go over to Weddington, Drew and Aiden Harris, TJ Davis on the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to tell you right now, their current backup quarterback at Weddington, Greg Fee, is an absolute physical specimen that I think is going to be a really, really good football player when he takes over next year, assumingly, obviously, he is the guy next year. You never know with high school football. Things change, but I expect him to be another really good player. You think about some of these other programs up at Lake Norman. You got Moses Morris. Mooresville has a bunch of kids coming back. West Charlotte, you think about some of the talent they have over there with all of those different guys, with all the speed they have.
And what Coach Griner did out there is a pretty amazing story this year.
I thought he did an excellent job there. You can go to look. This is a Palisades program that didn't have football 3 years ago, and they have greatly improved. You think about what's going on up at Huff and the quarterback position. That young man will be back as well. So much talent that's underclassmen, and I know I missed some guys. I'm sure sorry, everybody. I just did, right? You go to Myers Park, there's talent.
Is Eric Keel from is that the kid from Mooresville? The running back?
Moses Morse.
Morse.
Oh no, from Mooresville. I'm sorry, from Mooresville.
Is it Eric Keel?
Okay. I believe so.
I think he's a junior. We can double check.
Is a junior. Yes, it is Eric Heel. who's a junior, and they got Jadarius McCombs, who's another one that's pretty good as well. And oh, by the way, their quarterback, Brody Norman, he's only a sophomore.
Only
right?
a sophomore.
And that's a team that went 10-0 in the regular season. So you go back and look at what talent is in the area. And we haven't even gotten into the Myers Parks of the world. And, don't even get me started on the private school space.
Yeah.
When you look at offensive linemen like Leo Delaney and David Sanders at Providence Day, just to name a couple. So when you look at this thing on the whole, I think we had a great year this year. I think it sets up for another excellent year next year because of the amount of underclass talent that's playing so well in high school football.
Hey there, everyone. You're listening to the 704 High School Highlight Podcast, brought to you by the Downer Law Firm, Charlotte's hometown legal team. If you ever enter an accident, make sure you talk to the Downer Law Firm. They do great things, and we appreciate their support of Bahakel Sports, and especially this podcast. So thanks for them. Of course, we were talking to Reggie Walker. He is our Bahakel Sports, I call him the high school guru. The man pretty much knows everything when it comes to high school sports and high school football here in the Queen City. So Reggie, thanks for your time again. So let's set the table now for the weekend. We mentioned Saturday, 7:00. We have Weddington going against Hoggard. I think Weddington has a game plan. I think I know what that game plan is. Just kind of walk me through this game as we think about that kickoff at 7:00 on Saturday for that 4A championship.
Yeah, I think the initial plan is to just overwhelm at the line of scrimmage, right? I think one of the things that we know about Coach Capone is he's willing to do what it takes to win. He's not going to overthink this, right? He's not going to say, well, we're going to come out and do this because it sounds like a lot of fun. His mindset is the fun is going to be in the win. And if we can win at the line of scrimmage, that's what we're going to attempt to do. And I think they can do that. I think that's where they have an advantage. I also think Budge's feet at that quarterback position is such a big piece of what they can do, because even when the play might break down, he can take off with his feet. He can extend plays. They can use him in the quarterback running game, which I think is very, very important, because all of a sudden now you've got to deal with all 11 in the running game instead of just 10 because the quarterback hands the ball off and gets out of the way. So when you look at it from that standpoint, I expect them to run the football downhill and then use play action to take shots with Keenan Jackson down the field. I don't think there's anybody that can consistently handle Jackson in one-on-one situations in the state. I really don't. Not down in and down out. Can they get him for 3 or 4 plays here or there? Absolutely. A drive here or there? Absolutely. But he's going to make his share of plays when they need him to make it. And I think, look, when you ask me, what the keys to the game or maybe an X factor to the football game might be, I think it's Javon Barber. I really do, because Jackson's going to get a lot of attention on one side. People are going to load up the box to try to slow down Nick Diamond and Brady Ritter. But then, oh, by the way, you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble trying to stop that combination. And Budge is going to start hitting some throws to Javon Barber down the field. Barber averages almost 15 yards a catch. And oh, by the way, he's dangerous in the kick return game, 22 yards per return on the season as well. So when you think about this football team and what they can be and what Weddington brings to the table, I think that's very, very key. Now, that being said, what they're going to have to deal with is an efficient passing game, a very, very efficient passing game from this Hoggard football team. And the reason why is Hudson Wilharm, he's a guy that's smart with the football. He's a senior, so he's seen a lot, stands at about 6'4", 6'5". So he's a big physical kid back there in the pocket, completes almost 75% of his passes. Jeff, I'm going to say that again. Almost 75% of his passes he completes. They are efficient in the passing game. And then, oh, by the way, if you try to take that away, they've got multiple backs that can hurt you, whether it's Bellamy, Joseph Fontaine, or Webb. All of those guys up over 400 yards rushing this season or thereabouts can really, truly run the football. That spread out offensive attack, running the ball, and the efficiency of the passing game, the balance, I think is very, very important. And I think on that side of the ball, if you're Weddington, the keys for you have to be the Harris twins, Michael Louisa, Braden Barger. Those guys, those 4 guys have to win the line of scrimmage. TJ Davis in there as well. But a lot of teams, they formation him away from the line of scrimmage, out in space a little bit more to try to slow him down. He's still going to make plays. But those those four guys in that box area, you better have them accounted for if you're Hoggard, or they're going to destroy and wreck anything you want to do offensively.
Let me ask you this, Reggie. It's been a long time since Weddington has been away from home. And the best part from Coach Capone the other night was how he was excited he didn't have to paint the field anymore. And you've played and you've had the experience. Is it hard to kind of, I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong because it is a state championship, but I guess the question I'm getting at is how tough is it when you've played at home for so long now to go on the road and play in a different environment? I know it's a neutral site, but you know what I'm getting at? Is it tough for kids to kind of, and a coach to kind of set the tone when you've been at home for so long?
Well, normally I would say no, but here's why I think this one is a little bit different. And it's because, to your point, right? Like, it's a neutral site, and what is that, should that really impact the way they're going to play or the way it's going to look or the way it's going to feel? Well, here's the difference. They're getting ready to go play in a college football stadium.
True.
They're getting ready to go play in an environment that looks completely different than anything they've seen. To me, that's where the first 4, 5, 6 minutes, the first half of the first quarter is going to be very, very important. Don't let the building, the atmosphere, and the moment be too big. And if you can control that, you've got a chance to get off to a quick start, then play with confidence and find a way to win the football game. That's what it comes down to. And so when I look at it from that standpoint, both teams have to deal with that. They really, really do. And I think, you think about some of the scenarios and situations, and one of the best parts about Weddington and their time playing at home, and I would suspect similar for Hoggard. I haven't gone to, obviously, a lot of games at Hoggard this year, but when the stadium is always full at your high school, it's a smaller venue.
Right.
But you're used to it. Well, there's going to be more people, but the place is going to be so big.
Right.
It might feel like it's small again. And I think that, there's going to bring some familiarity for both teams as well. But I think the most important part is handle the venue, handle the different look of the venue, the nice locker rooms, all those things, right? Handle that first. And if you can handle that, I don't think the environment will bother you much at all.
We'll get to the three in just a second. And I just want to touch on what you just said. You ever saw the movie Hoosiers? Gene Hackman, when they go to the state championship, which is at the college arena, I think, he walks out there with a measuring tape and he measures from the ground of the basket to the rim. He goes, that's the same height as it is in your high school gym. The floor's the same size. The foul line, you're shooting from the same spot. So I know what you're getting at there. So, hey, let's switch gears a little bit to the 3A real quick. We have Hickory. They take it on 71st, and that is Friday night at 7. 71st, still, what a great name for a high school.
I love it.
Just a number. We got it. It's cool. I had the chance to see Hickory this past Friday night when they played Dudley in a crazy game. It was 42-41 was the final. And that was the first time I got to really see Hickory, and I could only stay there for a half because I had to get back to the station. It was a little bit of a haul. But what impressed me about Hickory was just their running game. Then you got a kid, Isaiah Lackey, who he wore number 34. And the first person that came to mind when I watched him run was Earl Campbell. The first play that I saw him run, he stiffed arm a guy. He broke like 3 tackles, and they had to drag him out of bounds. So as you think about that, what do you know about these two schools, and what do you think about that matchup for Friday night for the 3A state championship?
Let me make this point about Isaiah Lackey in that performance against Dudley. Stephen Davis is the head coach at Dudley. Somebody I've known for a good bit of time, played at North Carolina A&T. He's really good friends with a good friend of mine. I've talked football with him enough. That guy is one of the smarter football minds that you'll find as a high school coach in the state of North Carolina. The fact that they couldn't find a way to win that game because of what Hickory was able to do on their own tells you how good this Hickory football team is. It tells you how effective they are at figuring out what to do. This is a Dudley team that found a way to beat a Crest football team who hadn't lost a game, it seemed like, in like 30 years, right? Like this Crest team was dominant all season long, and Dudley was able to go into their house and get that win. So that tells you how good Dudley is defensively in particular. Isaiah Lackey, his physicality, his size, and that combination of speed allows him to do some things that you just don't expect to see from certain guys. And what I like about this kid the most is he's just impossible to bring down. 9 100-yard games this season, over 30 touchdowns, almost 6.5 yards a carry. And what you love about that as well is they're willing to continue to give it to him because they trust that he'll make plays. And I think anytime with, and we talked about this earlier, when you've got a back like Lackey, I should say, and an offensive line like that group up front that creates space for him, and a coach that trusts the process and is not caught up in what it looks like and more so in what it yields in terms of results, that is why you have a Hickory football team that's playing for a state championship game on Saturday night, or Friday night, I should say.
And as that game went along, I could see as Lackey started to wear the D down a little bit, Dudley started moving there. They started putting more in the box. I could tell the safety was cheating up a little bit more. Of course, then that opened up the passing game, which is exactly what you want to do. And let me give props real quick to Dudley, because I was at the Crest game and then I was at the Hickory game. And Dudley is in Greensboro, I believe. But
yes,
in both of those games, Reggie, the sidelines were full. The visitor side was sold out. So kudos to Dudley, because that team can travel. And they brought some people. So, yeah. So Hickory takes on 71st. That game, of course, is at 7 o'clock on Friday night. And just a quick reminder that the 3A game on Friday night, the 4A game on Saturday night, both of those at 7, are going to be shown on MeTV, part of our Bahakel Communications conglomerate. So you can check that game out live on MeTV. And, of course, we are going to stream all 4 games, the 1A, the 2A, the 3A, and the 4A. So you can make sure you head over to BahakelSports.com and you can check out all of those games. And it's going to be a great weekend of football. Reggie, let me leave it with this as our final question. And we talked about it a little bit more too. Overall, and we've talked about it, but I just want to hit on it one more time. The Queen City, in terms of moving forward with high school football, we talked about the underclassmen. We've talked to coaches, the young coaches that we have, how some of these lower seeds, I don't know why Independence was a 23 seed. I don't know that I'll ever get that. But a lot of lower seeds moved on. I mean, the future for the Queen City in terms of high school football is off the chart.
It really is. And I think that's an attribute to, really, I'll start with the parents, right? For allowing, right? This is a violent sport. And parents are allowing their kids to continue to play. And I'm very encouraged by that. So let's start there. Shout out to all the parents allowing their kids to play football, because it then allows the sport to continue to grow. It allows the evolution of coaching, which is the next group. I want to give a lot of credit to these coaches for being willing. Look, the conversation's been out there. We know they don't make a whole bunch of money to coach high school football in North Carolina.
Right.
I get that. Guess what? Thank you
Exactly.
for being willing to coach these kids and pour your heart into them week in and week out. And look, Jeff, we know we've gotten to the point now, even at the high school level, this is not a 4-month sport. It's year-round coaching football. You're working on it, looking at it, dealing with play. All that stuff is year-round. So you have to give credit to the coaches, and then obviously the players for being willing to be coached, being willing to sacrifice the time away from maybe some of their other friends and all of those different things. And I say this all the time. Anytime I talk to young kids that sign up for really any extracurricular activity, I call it, or sport, you're signing up to be different. You're making the commitment to do something more than everybody else, and you have to give them credit for that. So I think that's the biggest key to it, Jeff. And when you think about where high school football is, especially in the Charlotte area, and really, I think all over North Carolina, I think you're getting more and more of the Friday night lights kind of vibe. And oh, by the way, I'm talking to you, CMS. In addition to Memorial Stadium, when you start building some of these newer high schools, we know there are a couple in the works right now, you better build some bigger stadiums, because people are showing up and they're showing out. Yep. To watch these kids perform. And we need to make sure that the venues are strong enough and large enough so that these folks can really enjoy what these kids are putting out on the field and let those kids display their talents effectively.
Reggie Walker, my friend, as always, thanks for your time, man. You're a special dude, and we appreciate all you've done for Bahakel Sports in the fall here. And I know you're going to continue to do great things in all you do. So I appreciate your time, your effort, and everything you bring to the table, my friend.
Thanks, Jeff. And I'm gonna hit you with one of these, a couple of things on the way out. The Weddington Hoggard game, I think that's going to be a higher scoring affair because of the explosivity of both offenses. I know explosivity is not a word, but that's why I chose to use it, to make sure people understood what I meant when I said that. Right. And then look, let's think about this. Whether it's Hickory or 71st, neither of these two teams has scored less than 30 points in the playoffs. Guess what? The defenses will be the flavor of the day in the state championship. Mark my words.
Absolutely. Hey, it is going to be a great weekend of high school football. And of course, stick with Bahakel Sports. We got you covered from the 1A all the way through the 4A game. We'll bring you up to date on all that. Make sure you check out the Blitz on Friday night, 11 o'clock, WCCB, and on BahakelSports.com. And of course, always thanks for joining us on the 704 High School Highlight Podcast. This podcast doesn't happen without listeners. So wherever you listen or watch podcasts, make sure you check us out. You subscribe, comment, like, all those fun things you can do with that. Enjoy the football. We thank the Downell Law Firm for their sponsorship. They're Charlotte's hometown legal team. Make sure you check them out if you're ever injured. Enjoy the weekend of football, and we will talk to you next time on the 704 High School Highlight Podcast.